Hello, everybody. You made it to the weekend. And if you choose to watch the rest of this video, you're going to spend a little bit of that weekend thinking about something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is snap distribution for the Seahawks defensive linemen in 2021. We have 10 defensive linemen and one player who I expect will split time between linebacker and defensive lineman. So we basically got 11 players that we have to split playing time amongst, and only 4 players on any given play. So while it's great to have an abundance of quality players, you still have to figure out how to get them on the field. So I've been thinking about this lately. I've been thinking about the situations that the defense is going to find themselves in this year. I've been thinking about the schemes the defense might be running from snap to snap. And I'm basically just trying to get an idea of how much these guys are going to get on the field. So, how can we make sure that everybody gets a chance to play? And I don't mean that in a little league, everyone is 8 years old, so everybody should get on the field type of thing. I mean that in terms of how can we make sure we're keeping our rotations fresh and getting the best possible quality per snap out of each individual player while not wasting anybody and not allowing anybody to get worn out. So I decided to go and do what I usually do when I have a question about how the Seahawks might handle things on defense. I looked at the data, and I'm going to share that data with you now. So here are the number of total defensive plays the Seahawks ran from 2012 to 2020. In the early part of this era, you call it the Bobby Wagner era since we're doing defense, right? This is the Bobby Wagner era. The first half, you can see that we didn't have any seasons go above 1,000 plays. One season was 924 defensive plays, which is pretty incredible. That was a great mix of an elite defense with a ball control running offense that just didn't let the defense get on the field that often. 2016, the defense came off its perch, was no longer the best defense in the league, and we finally had a season where we had to face more than 1,000 plays. It happened again in 2017. 2018, we bounced back. We had 955 defensive plays in 2018 because the defense played pretty well. And the offense did a pretty good job of keeping them off the field, limited turnovers. 2019, it spiked up again because the defense at this point, quite frankly, was just bad. And then 2020, all hell broke loose. 1,111 total plays against. So this is how many plays we had run against us in each season. And from this data, I tried to estimate how many plays do you think the defense is going to be on the field for in 2021? Well, it's hard to predict exactly because it depends on many variables, but for the sake of this video, let's just say it's 1,000. I also took a look at down and distance situations where the other team has to pass the ball, because there are down and distance situations where a team is always going to have to pass the ball, or pretty much always going to have to pass the ball, regardless of game situation, right? Because we know there are game situations where a team is going to have to pass the ball, but those are harder to predict. What we can predict with some degree of success is how many times are Seahawks opponents going to find themselves in 3rd and 4 yards or more to go, or 4th down and 4 yards or more to go. As you can see, over the last 9 seasons, when Seahawks opponents have found themselves in these situations, 3rd and 4 or 4th and 4 or more, they pass the ball about 90% of the time. And I'm willing to guess, I'm not going to parse through all the data, but I'm willing to guess that a lot of the runs they had were QB scrambles. So when you put a team in a situation like this, 3rd and 4 plus or 4th and 4 plus, you're going to be facing a passing situation 95% of the time probably. You know it, they know it, everybody knows it. So these are pass-heavy situations. And I also, just for fun, took a look at run-heavy situations. And in the current NFL, there really aren't any. There's no down and distance situation where a team always runs the ball. The closest I could find over the last 9 years was first down and less than 10 yards to go, usually 1st and 5. As you can see, in 1st and 9 or fewer yards to go situations over the last 9 years, opposing teams have run the ball about, I'd say, 70 to 75% of the time. That's actually not even that conclusive, but it's the one down and distance scenario where teams generally preferred to run the ball. And even then, you can't, nothing's guaranteed. So, for one, if you're looking for evidence of why pass defense is more important in the current NFL than run defense, this is a great example of why. You can see how over the course of a season, on about 15% of the defensive plays you face, you are going to be able to predict with 95% accuracy when a team will have to pass the ball. You can't do that with the running game. You can maybe predict that a team is going to run the ball a lot when they're ahead and playing from a big lead. But in terms of down and distance, it's kind of can't be done. And from this data, I basically determined how many times will the Seattle Seahawks in 2021 face one of these must-pass situations, 3rd and 4 or more, 4th and 4 or more. I said about 165. How many times are they going to face a run-heavy situation where they can be 75-ish% confident that the other team is going to run the ball? I said about 25. And on top of this, I also decided to do a little bit of research in terms of what kinds of formations the Seahawks might line up with in 2021. The Seahawks have really bucked the trend in recent years in how much they've lined up in base defense versus nickel defense versus dime defense. In 2018, they were in base defense 34% of the time, which was 5th most in the NFL. They lined up in nickel 49% of the time, one of the few teams to do it less than half of the time. And dime, a roughly average amount, 14%. 2019, they went crazy. This was ridiculous. We all remember, I think. 69% of the time they lined up in base, by far the most in the league. 27% of the time they were in nickel, one of the lowest counts in the league. And 3% of the time they were in the dime. So we really didn't like to get our cornerbacks on the field. Fortunately, in 2020, this pattern reset a little bit. And I can't find the exact numbers. I had to estimate it based off snap counts. But as near as I could tell, it seemed to me that in 2020, we were in base about 35% of the time. And then we were in nickel about 60% and dime about 5% of the time. I'm waiting for Football Outsiders to come out with the exact numbers, but it could be a couple months. So my rough estimate is 35-65. Now, 35% base defense is still one of the higher numbers in the league. And why do the Seahawks like to run base defense more than other teams in the league? Because they like their linebackers. They like Bobby and they like KJ. They want to put them out on the field as much as possible. Well, doesn't look like we're going to have KJ anymore. And even if Darrell Taylor does move to Sam, that gives us 2 linebackers that we have real confidence in. So before we get into exact snap distribution, I want to say one thing. I expect the 2021 Seahawks defense to get off of their base defense addiction. And I expect to see a number closer to 25%, which is actually close to the league average right now. Teams are not in base defense that often. 25% might be average. You might even see this number be a little lower. We'll see, but I expect base defense to go down to about 25% in 2021 because we don't have KJ. And then nickel, 65%, dime, 10%. These are estimations. I freely admit that, and I could be very wrong. I could be spot on. Only time will tell. But based off the personnel and based off the trends, I think we'll be in base defense about 25%. So with these two things in mind, I started to construct a snap distribution for our linemen. And here's what I came up with. Now, before I show the numbers, let me just say real quick that obviously these numbers have not been refined. These numbers are never going to be perfect. There are some generalizations made. If you gave me a couple more hours with this, I could probably crank out more precise data, but it doesn't need to be done. It doesn't need to be perfect. We just need to estimate what this might look like. So let's go ahead and get into it real quick. Here's what I have for the 11 defensive linemen who I expect to play for the Seahawks this year. We have 2 defensive tackles on the field on every play and 2 defensive ends. If we play 1,000 snaps in 2021, that means we need about 2,000 snaps per position. Now, there's a difference between a Leo end and a 5-tech end. There's a difference between a 1-tech tackle and a 3-tech tackle. I get that. But we have enough versatility up front to swap the roles around a little bit and make this work. So here's what I'm thinking. If my estimate holds true, we are going to face about 165 obvious passing down and distances in 2021. There might be a few more because we'll be playing some games where we have a big lead and we know the other team has to pass. Or maybe it's a 2-minute drive trying to go win the game and we know the other team has to pass. But let's say 165 ends up being the number of times where the defense gets to line up knowing with 95% certainty the other team is lining up for a pass. So what if we made those 165 snaps our NASCAR package downs? NASCAR package being a situation where you get 4 really good pass rushers on the field at the same time. You don't worry about the run stuffers. You don't worry about sucking up blocks. You just get 4 guys who can race to the QB. So I theorized that on these downs, you could have Carlos Dunlap play defensive tackle, so he has 165 snaps at defensive tackle. I also think these are snaps where Collier gets on the field at defensive tackle, where I think he's going to be permanently anyway. And then I also said that, that at defensive end, you would probably see Aldon Smith on the field for these 165 snaps. And you could also probably put Darrell Taylor out there for 165 defensive end snaps. He's basically a rookie. He has no NFL experience. Why not let him only play defensive end on snaps where he knows he's going to get to pin his ears back and go to the QB? So that's kind of the NASCAR package element of this, where you just get 4 great rushers on the field. Dunlap, Aldon Smith, Collier, Taylor, go meet me at the QB. So that takes care of 165 snaps of the 1,000. Now we also have the base defense thing, where I estimated that we would be in base defense about 20%, 25% of the time in 2021. So Darrell Taylor is going to be the Sam linebacker, meaning that when base defense is on, that's how he gets on the field. So here you can see that Taylor has 165 defensive end snaps and 250 Sam snaps. That gets him to 415 for the season. 42%, give or take, of the total snaps on the season for the defense. Pretty good for a rookie in a deep rotation. So with those 2 things, we've gotten Darrell Taylor to a pretty reasonable goal for his snap count in 2021. So I continue to do this for each of our players. I said, okay, Dunlap's playing this many snaps at tackle. How many is he going to play at defensive end? I said 350. That gets him to 515 total. I said Alton Robinson's going to pick up some of the Leo snaps when Dunlap's not at Leo. He's going to get 300. Mayoa gets to pick up the garbage from there at Leo. He gets to about 185. Kerry Hyder, you might see him play a little bit of defensive tackle, especially in NASCAR packages. He might end up being the guy who plays tackle in NASCAR over Dunlap, depending on who proves they can do it better. So definitely feel free to consider swapping some of these numbers around, but I said 500 defensive end snaps, and that's it. Aldon Smith, he gets the 165 NASCAR package snaps at end, plus another 300. That gets him to 465. Rasheem Green, I gave him 200 snaps at end as a 5-tech, and then I threw him some kind of a little bit of a bone at defensive tackle, 85 extra snaps just to fill out the total number of defensive tackle snaps. Gets him to 285. Poona Ford is the one guy on this defensive line who I have playing way more than 500 snaps. He gets to 600. I just don't think you can get Poona off the field that much. He's too versatile. He's good at run stuffing. He's good at pass. He's getting better, at least as a pass rusher. He's our best 3-tech and probably our best 1-tech, although I think he's going to play 3-tech a lot more this year. So yeah, Collier, I have his snap count going up to 450. He's a young guy who has a lot to prove. I think his snap count deserves to go up a little bit. and this allows him to stay fresh as he adjusts to his new position. And then you have Woods and Monet cleaning things up at the defensive tackle spot. So that gets us to 2,000 snaps from the tackles and 2,000 snaps from the ends, which is what we needed to get to. Now, you can mix and match your own numbers in here if you feel like things should be done a little bit differently. Like I said, maybe Kerry Hyder plays tackle on the NASCAR package and not Dunlap. Maybe Dunlap just plays end. Maybe Alton Robinson should get on the field in the NASCAR packages instead of either of them. It's at least a discussion. Should Rasheem Green get on the field as a defensive tackle for the NASCAR packages? However you want to slice it, this is just one way the team can handle their abundance of talent at defensive line. None of these players are going to play more than 700 snaps. I have one player who plays more than 600 and two players who play more than 500. So 3 actually have a significant load. And 500 snaps over a 16-game season is not really that much. That's a little more than, 30 snaps a game? Totally manageable for any in-shape and decent defensive player. Now, there are going to be injuries. There are. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. There will be injuries. We just have to hope that the injuries are make a player miss a game, make a player miss 2 games, and not makes the player miss the season. If there are injuries, then it's okay. Benson Mayowa, you're up. Your snap count's going up. Mayowa can handle a few hundred more snaps than this if need be. 5 Tech gets hurt. Rasheem Green, you're up. You're in a contract year. You're probably not thrilled about only getting 285 snaps. Maybe you're going to get 485 if something happens to Hyder or Alden Smith. If a 3 Tech gets hurt, okay. You've got a little bit of flexibility there too. Hyder might be able to play 5 Tech. Maybe Dunlap. And if a 1 Tech gets hurt, you can bump Puna back over because he played 1 Tech last year and was fine at it. So yeah, if there are injuries, well, not if, when there are injuries, there are players on this team who have limited snap counts who can step up. Benson Mayowa is more than capable of playing more than 185 snaps over the course of a season. Rasheem Green, same thing. If we need Monet to play 400 snaps instead of 300, he can do that. Maybe Al Woods. I don't want to put too much on Al Woods because he's old, but he could probably play 450 snaps and not really think anything of it. So this is one potential snap distribution for the Seahawks defensive line. What would you do a little differently? Do you like what I have here? However you do it, it should be pretty easy to make sure that no Seahawks defensive lineman plays more than 700 snaps this year. Honestly, with garbage time and injuries, I don't think anybody's going to get over 600. I think Ford will probably get to sit out a couple of fourth quarters, and this number won't even get to 600. So that's my take on the snap distribution, and this is exciting to me, guys. This is the stuff that excites me. This is having 11 guys who are rotating in and out all the time on your defensive line and staying fresh. So at the end of games, when they need to make plays, they can. I'm out of here. Another video later today. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think in the comments.